So what happens if we don't think systemically about school? What happens if we continue to address school in the same way that we now address school? We're dealing with failing capital. We're watching our schools crumble. We're watching a system that cannot support the high dollar system that we currently employ. We see many of our dollars going to schooling that addresses the pressing needs of 1910. And so let's look at our schools carefully. Let's not continue sending our money into schools that are not using it properly. Let's have a conversation about values. If we don't, we continue to go down the road of putting money into efforts that are wasted. We continue to fund an educational system that's broken, that deals with national standards that nobody exhibits. Rather than having the kinds of national test norms that we have today, why don't we look at testing students for what their skills are and what their attainment levels are? If we continue teaching students to take tests, what we'll have is students that continue to pass tests and continue to score below Finland. If we continue to fund the schools as they are, let me start over on that. If we continue to go down the road of making a system that doesn't work try to poorly match our expectations, we end up funding schools that will eventually lose their clientele to homeschooling. They will lose their clientele to charter schools. We will see pockets of poverty, pockets of economic despair, and schools that do not meet the needs of their learners. So where do we begin? We begin with a conversation. That's the way American values have always started. We look at what's important to us. We then fund that which is important, and we don't fund that which is not important. Will there be a transition? Of course there will. There's never been an unpainful transition before in the history of education or in the history of civilization. Transitions are difficult. So what does that mean for our schools? It means that the conversation should have begun 10 years ago. It means that people have to talk to each other. People have to listen to each other. And people need to learn how to make compromises, not that represent their political interests, but that represent their children and the future of America. The children that we have are the ones that are not benefiting from our schools. And we put far too much effort, time, blood, sweat, and tears in protecting an institution that's dying. It's time to figure out what is important for our institutions. It's time to figure out what's important for our children. Let's do education so that we're benefiting individuals, not classes, not communities, not states, not nations. Let's start measuring students where they are. Let's start teaching them where they are, and let's start moving them forward individually.